me talk to y'all right quick, you know. So y'all know we gotta start thinking about our health. We especially us that's the over 40 club, we gotta really start taking it more seriously. You know how we hear when we're younger, like, oh, you're gonna hate you eating that and all this and that, you know, wait till you get older, wait till you get older. Well, yeah, we starting to get older. Now we ain't just old like that, but we do have to start taking our health more into consideration, and not just for us, our family as well, because we got to be the one to take charge of them eating a little bit healthier, even young. You know what I'm saying? Even better if they were like babies, you know what I'm saying? But if not, it's hard to kind of turn it around. But definitely, you know, it's something that we need to do. You can incorporate it little by little. Vitamins also, it's good to have a multivitamin for your kids.
This is the one that my 9-year-old uses.
As well as a multivitamin for yourself. I will show the one that I usually would use. If you don't want to swallow a pill, then a gummy, something. You know what I mean?
And just to be clear, they have gummies and tablets. And I like the dual action vitamins, and they also have more than just multivitamin plus beauty. They also have in the dual action multi and mental focus and multi and omega-3s. And then, you know, they just got general men, women, and even 50 plus for men and women. So there are options, and it's not just for women, you know, men, women of all ages.
So just a general, you don't have to just have a whole medicine cabinet of stuff. You know, I'm not a person that's dealing with any kind of like significant health issues like that. You know what I mean? I'm not on no type of medicine or something that I have to take every day. Thank God, you know, but some people are, and that's okay. You know, do what you got to do for yourself. But definitely, of course, it's in what you eat. At least take a multivitamin. Also, something else that I would suggest, if you're just not a person that just want to take a whole bunch of stuff, but especially like Black people, we need vitamin D3. First, we'll just start with the D. That's like the sunshine vitamin.
And make sure you screenshot these for, you know, the information. But basically, it's a sunshine vitamin because when the sun hits your skin, it converts a form of cholesterol in the skin to pre-vitamin D3, which then transforms into vitamin D3. And then that is transported to the liver and the kidneys, where it's further processed into an active form that your body can use. And it's good for bone health, which helps your body absorb calcium and phosphorus and plays a role in your immune health, your muscle health, and your cell growth. And then here are some of the benefits of vitamin D. You know, it's going to help you sleep better, fight diseases, feel better, your energy levels, your calcium, your immune system, your weight. It supports your nervous system, healthy teeth, healthy bones, supports your lungs, brain function, reduces the risk of the flu, healthy babies, and regulates your insulin levels. So it has a lot of benefits, and it's often overlooked. So that's why I'm starting with that, because I got hip to that. Vitamin D is very important, as well as, you know, the different sources that you can get it from, like the sunlight, mushrooms, egg yolk, cheese, fatty fish, orange juice, cod liver oil, caviar. I know y'all remember them old school giving you cod liver oil. Oh my gosh, I'm so gross though. So yeah, vitamin D is definitely essential. Yet it's often overlooked because you'll be surprised 75% of Americans are deficient in vitamin D, and even higher risk of being deficient if you're limited to the sun, you have more melanin in your skin, pregnant or a baby, elderly or overweight. So, you know, these are the things it can help you with, and you definitely need to take it.
Because you get that, you know, it can transform the sunlight into vitamin D in your body. However, if you're a person that don't get out in the sun that much, or say it's wintertime, it's not that much sun, or we have more melanin, so it's just harder to absorb or you know, turn into vitamin D like that, then we all need to be taking some vitamin D, especially Black people, and especially dark-skinned Black people.
And the reason why I'm specifically mentioning, you know, us as melanated people is because the melanin in our skin protects us from sunburn, but it also produces vitamin D slower. whereas lighter skin can burn easily, but it produces vitamin D quicker. And so this is a chart just showing, you know, based on skin tone, the time of year, the recommended amount that you should, you know, be in the sun. But yeah, most Black people are deficient in vitamin D, especially if you're not a person that's out in the sun a lot, because you definitely would have to be out there longer than, you know, less melanated people. And even within, you know, melanated people, the darker the skin tone, the longer you'd have to be out in the sun to get the recommended amount of vitamin D that you need. So 9 times out of 10, Black people for sure need to be on some type of vitamin D supplement. And make sure you screenshot this so you can look back over all this stuff. But these are some signs to look for if you're just curious if your body is deficient in vitamin D. So definitely, you know, take a closer look at that. But again, like I say, it's very essential.
Just everybody really should be taking it. It's lots of benefits for it. And even something as simple as just like depression and just mood changes and things as well. Sometimes they'll say it's seasonal depression, but also sometimes it could be something simple like just lack of vitamins, you know, like vitamin D, especially if you're a homebody. I'm a homebody too. You know, I'm not just out and about doing the most either all the time.
So not getting outside in nature for an extended period of time, it's still, you know, resulting in less sun exposure, which can affect you. And there's various factors that can affect you, even outside. If it's shade, you're being obese, the time of the day, age, melanin, and the distance from the equator, basically where you live. So there are benefits to vitamin D, but especially in the hotter parts of the year, there's a recommended time frame to be outside, because there is a such thing as too much vitamin D, whether it's from supplements or being outside. And if you didn't work outside before or been outside a long time, there's a such thing as sun poisoning or just being overexposed, even if it's just sunburn on a basic level. But whether it's from the supplements or just directly being outside, you can notice that the symptoms parallel each other. So definitely be wary of that too. But if you are experiencing some deficiency symptoms, then I would recommend to go ahead and do the extra strength vitamin D, the 5,000 IU. But I would do that over a short term period. And I'm going to explain why short term, because there's something else that I found out involving vitamin D3 and the best way to take it over a long term period of time.
Definitely, I would say that I got hip to vitamin D, and not only that, vitamin D3 with K2.
Make sure you're getting your screenshots, but these are the benefits of vitamin K. Can help you fight cancer, help your bones, blood clotting, your heart health, insulin sensitivity, and boost brain function. And here are some signs if you're vitamin K deficient, where you may bruise easily, your gums bleed, nose bleed, maybe blood in your urine and stools, and extremely heavy menstrual bleeding. So again, it's just reiterating the benefits of vitamin K. And so that's K in general, but there are 2 different kinds, K1 and K2. And so that just lists some of the foods that you can eat to get your vitamin K in 1 and 2. K1 is responsible for healthy blood clotting. K2 tells the calcium where to go, you know, in your bones and your arteries. Vitamin K1 is easier to get from your diet of green vegetables, whereas vitamin K2, which mostly comes from animal foods or fermented foods, that is not easier to get all what you need from your food. Even changing your diet, still 97% of people don't get the optimal amount of vitamin K2 from their diet. So yeah, you see how K2 specifically deals with calcium, and you see how some of the benefits are parallel to D2, and we talked about supporting bone health. Then that'll make more sense than why it makes sense to take it together, which I will explain further.
Vitamin D3 with K2. And there's a reason why the K2, I got hip to that later on, because it helps absorb it and direct the calcium to the bones. And also it's a risk like if you take vitamin D by itself, it gives you like a calcified arteries and heart disease possibly, I'll put it up there. But yeah, so not only vitamin D, but take it with the D2. If you can't do the pills, do the gummies, the chewable, especially the kids. Everybody should be taking it. So I would say multivitamin and this. Then also, I usually like to get a multivitamin that also has the hair, skin, nail stuff in there, or biotin and stuff like that. But if not, just get the hair, skin, nails. You know what I mean? Again, pill, gummy, whatever is better for you. And then something that I will take too is iron. This one is the one that I normally take.
And this defines what iron is and the benefits it is to our overall health. It's going to be crucial for transporting oxygen via our hemoglobin in our red blood cells. And it supports our energy levels, contributes to our immune health, cognitive function, and overall vitality. So yeah, just check that out. And this diagram just shows the difference in iron and hemoglobin. So yeah, the iron is the site where the oxygen binds, but the hemoglobin is almost like the vehicle that it's in. And that's how it makes its way through your bloodstream. So they are kind of different. The iron is the mineral and the hemoglobin is the protein. And those would require two separate tests because it's possible, for one to be low and not the other. And this further explains the differences in both the hemoglobin and the iron test. But I just was curious, for our physicals usually, because they are supposed to test that. I was curious what test do they normally do, and it's normally a hemoglobin test. So the hemoglobin test is a complete blood count test, and that's the most common test. It's going to indirectly give you information about your iron. So you'll have to specifically have them test for iron if that's a specific concern that you have. And I honestly didn't know that those were two different tests. I just thought it was just iron test. But if you look at the iron test, that last paragraph, there are even different iron tests because they have a serum iron, ferritin, total iron binding capacity. So that can get even more tedious. So definitely I only know of getting the hemoglobin test. And so this is a chart that just shows the normal range of the hemoglobin levels. And it's categorized with children in the age groups, female and male. And so, where it shows the first number to that number, that's the lowest in the normal range and the highest in the normal range. And mean means the average. So for adult females, the normal range would be anywhere from 12.1 to 15.1 with an average of 14, and adult men, 13.6 to 17.7 with an average of about 15.5. So the men's iron tend to go a little bit higher than women. And so this is a list of some iron-rich foods that you can eat just to kind of maintain your iron levels and how much iron that we should eat daily based off of age group and gender.
And usually I could tell when I'm starting to get a little low on iron, where I feel more fatigued, more tired. Lips feel dry, sluggish, that kind of stuff. Or you can seem paler, your skin seem more pale or yellow right here, If you're a person that struggles with having an appetite too, that's another one with when low on iron, your appetite be funny. Just stuff like that. And I usually am a person that has battled with low iron ever since childhood. I really had severe anemia when I was younger.
And yes, there is a difference because you can have an iron deficiency, but it's not all the way anemia. And there can be different reasons for anemia too. It doesn't have to be related to iron as well. But the iron deficiency happens when your iron stores drop below the ideal level, but your hemoglobin overall is still normal. Because remember I said one can be low and not the other. Whereas anemia is developed when the low iron kind of goes on a while to where it leads to a drop in your hemoglobin. Then that's when you start reaching the point of being anemic. And so this just kind of explains it and shows a diagram of what that actually looks like, as well as some of the causes like blood loss, malabsorption, you're not getting all your nutrients, it's something obstructing that, gastrointestinal conditions, and just not getting enough from your food. And when we say blood loss, then of course with women having menstruation, especially if you're a heavy bleeder, then it's possible that, say between your next cycle, you might be having certain symptoms that make you feel like your iron is low, even if it's not anemia. But if it's consistent heavy bleeding, hey, it could be. So just make sure you check it out, especially if you have an issue. But just showing a comparison, the above chart is what I showed you previously of the normal ranges. Well, the other two charts below shows its different levels to anemia, because like how you see the adult women, once it goes below 12, you start, having low iron or anemia, and men 13.6. Well, it's considered mild anemia once you go below 12 on average, 11, 12, moderate once you start going, less than 11 to about 8, and severe, 8 and 7s up in there. So when I was a teenager living with my grandma in the Mississippi Delta, where it's just flat land, it's super hot. I'm talking about you don't even want to go outside before a certain amount of time. Well, I remember having to go to the doctor and they tested it, and that's when they told me mine was as low as 7. So if the average is 14, that's like having half the blood, because that's what they say. They like, you got about half what you're supposed to have, because I didn't know no different. I didn't know. But I just know I was having symptoms and seeing black dots and weak, and just, how when you go outside and just, you're seeing, it was wild. So yeah, that is when I had what I said, severe anemia. It does fall in that category, having 7 when it's supposed to be about 14 on average. So it's levels to it, So, you can have low iron or even anemia, but it can be mild, moderate, but it can get, serious. So, but by then you probably having some symptoms, and please don't be the type, don't go to the doctor. Just make sure you go. Men, women, children, whatever, if you chill out, pay attention. You know what I mean? Catch it early before it get out of hand. Try to get sufficient iron intake from your diet or supplements if you have to. But no matter which way you're doing it, there can be reasons when it said malabsorption that can interfere with your body actually absorbing iron. So if you're not intaking enough vitamin C in general, then you're probably not absorbing all the iron from your diet or supplements. But especially if you're taking supplements, then a good tip is to take it on an empty stomach and with a glass of orange juice. Also, antacids or calcium, milk can interfere with absorption as well. So try to avoid that, 2 hours, within 2 hours of taking it. And also caffeine. So if you're a big coffee drinker, just caffeine can interfere as well with the absorption of iron. And that last highlighted line says that it can reduce the absorption by up to 50%. So that's pretty significant. And so this is a list that just shows, popular common caffeinated drinks. It's not just coffee, some teas, dark sodas, some energy drinks, some caffeinated alcoholic drinks, stuff like that. So just be mindful of that, especially if you consume any of this stuff on a regular basis. Iron issues doesn't have to necessarily mean that you have less. It's still an issue if you have too many red blood cells, because it can cause your blood to thicken and become sluggish, which can still deprive the organs of oxygen, because the oxygen is going to carry the iron and the hemoglobin and all of that. So I'm not just recommending people just start taking iron pills unless that's an issue that you normally have. Like I say, try to consult your doctor, but there could be an issue of having too much iron. So if you just pick it up and just start taking iron and didn't have no issue, you definitely don't want to create an issue. So, just wanted to make sure I put that in there too. And this just shows some of the reasons that could lead to high hemoglobin levels, burns, dehydration, and this is over long periods of time. Severe COPD, heavy smoking, which I thought was interesting, um, living at a high altitude, extreme physical exercise, so be careful of that, severe lung disorders. So, again, make sure you check if you have any conditions too. But I just found that interesting that heavy smoking can lead to high hemoglobin as well as alcoholism. I saw that somewhere too on a different slide. I couldn't find it, but that can either lead to, iron deficiency or iron overload, aka high hemoglobin. So just you want to look at the information about that and feel free to screenshot that, even though we all know that just drinking and smoking is not good for you anyways. I mean, common sense should tell you that. But if you just need to see it, since we talking about certain things, it can affect you, which, like I say, most people know that, but, definitely you don't want to do that stuff, especially in excess. And it says it can disrupt your iron metabolism. So it can lead to iron deficiency or, high iron with alcoholism. So you know where you fall at if you drink a bit. So just be honest with yourself. It's levels, but be careful with that. Because I've heard before that some people say that red wine is supposed to be good for your blood and good for your iron. But I specifically typed it in here. So it's a no. It's a no. Because of the tannins, it's just like caffeine. It's gonna have the polyphenols in there that's gonna block the iron from absorbing because it binds to it. So no, if you thought red wine was good for your blood, no, it's not. It's actually blocking the iron. Only way I could see that possibly being good is if you deal with having high hemoglobin. And even then, it's still just not good to drink in excess. But this just kind of explains the link, how it happens.
I haven't just really just had straight up anemia like that. Especially lately, but especially stuff like eating ice and stuff like that, when you crave doing stuff like that and popsicles and things, that could be a sign of low iron. I found that out when I was younger, and I am a person when I was younger used to be eating ice and all that kind of stuff. So I don't crave doing that kind of stuff now, thank goodness. It's fine. I did recently have a health checkup, my routine checkup, about a month ago, a little less than a month ago. And so, yeah, my iron levels and stuff was fine, but that's something that I always have to take into consideration. And also with us being like 40 and above, we had to take stuff like iron intake and protein into consideration, because we do start losing muscle mass and stuff like that as we age. I think 3 to 5% a year after 30 or something I saw. I'll put that statistic up there if I'm correct.
So yeah, I'm correct in the 3 to 5% around the age of 30, but it's not per year, it's per decade, thank goodness. Because losing 3 to 5% of your muscle mass without exercise every year is wild. It says that muscle mass and strength peak around the ages of 30 to 35, to where it starts gradually declining after that. And it's important to note that this is without regular strength training. I know some people do cardio and all this kind of stuff and running and all that, but if you don't do the strength training, then naturally this is what usually happens. And then it can increase per decade. So about 40s, you can lose anywhere from 7 to 8% of your muscle mass, and then 15% each decade after the age of 70. To the point where with no regular strength training exercise, you can lose a total of anywhere from 25 to 30% of your total muscle mass. And there is an official term for, muscle mass loss due to aging, and it's called sarcopenia. And so, yeah, this is a definition. It says about 10 to 20% of older adults have it. Also, I highlighted some of the symptoms like difficulty performing everyday tasks, like climbing stairs. It's really good if you have stairs, because even if you're not doing a lot of physical activity, at least going upstairs is something. You'd be surprised that little bit can be something the older you get. Loss of stamina, poor balance and falls, and decrease in muscle size. And of course, it's due to inactivity and other things like obesity, malnutrition, and other health conditions. But especially if you're not getting adequate protein intake, which is kind of the focus of what I'm talking about. Of course, it can be other things too. And so this shows just the ways that muscle loss can impact your health. Falling easily, loss of mobility, your heart health is affected, your weight, insulin resistance, hospital complications, breathing problems, and just your overall life expectancy can be affected by the loss of muscle. So definitely that's important, especially them falls, because the older you get, and you've heard about how some older people, once they fall and break their hip, something, a regular fall, they may wouldn't have did all that, but then they don't have as much muscle and all that stuff to cushion and protect them, and we know how devastating those type of falls tend to be. So yeah, definitely take it seriously. So yeah, definitely increase your muscle mass, especially as we get older, because you want to not be as vulnerable to falls, and keeping your balance and nothing else, and at least keep, from losing 4 to 6 pounds of muscle mass every decade. So you can counteract your muscle loss by having regular exercise, especially focusing on strength training to slow it down, a high protein diet, and staying active, maintaining a healthy weight. And so this is a cool diagram or MRI images just showing the comparison of what the loss of muscle looks like as you age, and the difference in when you're active versus inactive. And it's showing the ratio of the fat or adipose tissue, bone, and muscle. And as you can see, yes, we see what it looks like a sedentary or inactive person, at 74 years old. But you see how the 40-year-old triathlete and the 70-year-old triathlete MRIs look just about the same. So you definitely can maintain your muscle mass significantly as you age through strength training, physical activity, diet, and exercise, which includes a high protein intake in your diet.
The protein is going to help with your muscle mass, or especially if you are working out, which we all should try to do some physical activities, even if it's just some little lightweight. Try to get into it. I ain't never been consistent with it. I ain't no person running to the gym. It's going to have to be in the house for me. That's what I prefer.
Right. I can say there was stuff that I'm supposed to be using to work out with, y'all. I be going hard when I do think about trying to do it. Got some dumbbells, got some what's those resistance bands or whatever, jump rope, something just to put your foot in to try to do a doggone sit up. Weighted hula hoop, you name it. So I call myself trying, y'all. I call myself trying. So definitely gonna get back to that, because we need it. We have to be more active, especially if you're a homebody or more sedentary.
I'm not necessarily trying to manage my weight. I can, tighten up this belly a little bit, but I ain't mad at it. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm a person that struggled with having low weight for years. So, I'm just thankful to be eating good. I'm enjoying it. But definitely you want protein, because that's going to help with your muscles.
And so just getting into the definition of proteins, is an essential macronutrient that's made of amino acids, and it's crucial for growth, repair, and various bodily functions. But doubling back to the word macronutrients, because I've heard of nutrients, but I don't, just in case you like me and you just wondering, okay, what's the difference in the macronutrients versus just nutrients? So I got you. Macronutrients are the nutrients we need in larger amounts that provide us with energy, versus micronutrients are mostly vitamins and minerals. And even though they're important, we need those in smaller amounts. And usually we can get our micronutrients by way of the macronutrients. So, hey, this is interesting. Learn something new every day. And since we over here learning today, might as well. At least you know I'm gonna be thorough. Also, another term I had to address, because it couldn't just be as simple as defining what protein is saying that it's made of amino acids. So, hey, we had to go into defining, well, what's that? So, that is an organic compound and it acts as the building blocks of protein. That's why I had to get into that, because, okay, it's the building blocks of protein. Well, hey, we got to know what that is too. And so, it's an essential nutrient. And it's saying that the human body breaks down proteins to create amino acids, which it then uses to make new proteins that help break down your food. And although it's over 500 amino acids in nature, only 22 appear in the genetic code and are incorporated into proteins. And this further explains what amino acids do, more so in layman's terms, breaks down the food, grow and repair body tissue, make hormones and brain chemicals, provide energy, maintain healthy skin, hair, and nails, build muscles, same protein, boost your immune system, and sustain a normal digestive system. And there are 9 essential amino acids when it comes to protein. And so these names, honey, but I think that's very interesting, and it kind of breaks down what the amino acids do specifically by name. For example, I'm going to try to take a shot in the dark with some of these names. You tell me, correct me if I'm wrong. What is it? Phenylalanine, crucial for neurotransmitter production. Valine, crucial for muscle repair and growth. Leucine, crucial for muscle growth and repair. If you can see that screenshot and look up close, but yeah, that's what the amino acids do specifically, the 9 essential ones. Which is important to note, because definitely this protein thing, it was so many branches and categories, it just really sent me down a rabbit hole that I was not intended to go explaining these, probably even more so than I am. But I'm going to try not to drag it. Just, like I say, screenshot it if you just really want to delve further into some of the information. And then to further explain what makes it essential, non-essential, or conditional, is that the essential amino acids must be obtained from your diet, what you eat. Non-essential can be synthesized from consuming essential amino acids. And then there's conditionally essential amino acids, which is essential during times of illness, stress, or growth, would be the conditions. So now we know that amino acids make up proteins. Well, with those 2 groups in amino acids, you already know they had to have some kind of categories with proteins too. So you got complete and incomplete proteins. And to define that, it says of the 20 amino acids, the human body is capable of producing 11 of them. So the other 9, the essential amino acids we talked about, must be supplied from your food. And so the complete proteins contain all 9 of those essential amino acids that we talked about, that's usually found in animal sources like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy products. Whereas incomplete proteins lack 1 or more essential amino acids, and they're usually found in plant sources like legumes, nuts, seeds, and grains. So as you can see, if you thought proteins was just meat products, it's not. And so the best way for your body to get the most complete proteins is to eat a wide variety of protein sources throughout your day. And also you can do complementary proteins, especially for the people who are not really meat eaters or vegans, stuff like that. Then you can eat a variety of incomplete proteins to make a complete protein. But I'll touch on more specifics with that in a bit. But yeah, so you can finish looking at this. This is the category of animal-based versus plant-based proteins, and the types of food and the grams of protein that you can get from them. And the grams of protein would be important to note if you're trying to keep up with how many grams of protein that you're consuming every day. And this just kind of shows what each category, animal and plant, is high and low in. And then just showing some complete protein from plant sources of those specific essential amino acids that I listed before. So you see how it lists the amino acid and what food sources that it comes from, if you just want to target those specifically. And now touching on the complementary proteins, where you see it says below, if you can't eat a complete protein, then pair 2 incomplete proteins together. And so you can screenshot these, but it shows how to more strategically, intentionally combine vegetal, plant-based proteins together to get complete proteins and make sure that you're not lacking in any of the essential amino acids that you need. And so this is very important, especially if you're more plant-based or vegan, to how to strategically get all of the essential amino acids and proteins that you need, even though ideally you would want to combine animal-based and plant-based, complete and incomplete proteins to just, get a holistic diet for those who are not vegan. But if you are, or just heavily focused on, the plant-based proteins, then you don't have to be deficient in proteins due to that. You just got to be a little bit more strategic about mixing them together so you get what you need. But regardless of your dietary preference, this is just a general recommendation of the daily allowance of how many grams of protein each group, children through certain ages, women and men should consume a day. But then the middle chart, it helps if you want to be a little bit more specific about calculating how much protein that you need exactly via your body weight and what lifestyle that you fall into, whether you're elderly, trying to lose weight or build muscle. And really, if you're an active person or working out, then really it's easy. Just match 1 gram of protein per pound. So if you 160 pounds, then 160 grams of protein a day. Because of course we already know you need more, for your muscles working out. Versus that same 160-pound person, if you just want to meet the minimum requirements just to prevent deficiency, then you would just take that 0.36 and multiply that by 160, and it's 57.6 grams of protein, which is a lot different than 160 grams of protein. So at least try to do that. Just, of course, use your specific body weight. And so listed below are some ways to identify if you're protein deficient. It can lead to health problems like stunted growth, a weak immune system, and impaired wound healing. It takes a while for your wounds to heal. And this just further elaborates on further symptoms to let you know if you're eating enough protein, if you're having these symptoms. So it said if you ticked at least 3 of these, then you need to start paying attention to your protein intake. And then, if you're a person that be having swelling and fluid retention, brain fog, you sick all the time, weak, hungry all the time, because protein kind of helps you from being hungry. I think it makes you feel full kind of fast. Your weak hair and brittle nails and skin. And that really runs parallel to some of the deficiency symptoms that we were talking about earlier with vitamin D, iron, and all of that, as to why I just talked about all this stuff, because that's just a way to kind of address all those things in a basic way. But of course, I am not a doctor, and you could have other underlying conditions or pre-existing conditions that you already know you have that could be causing some of these issues. So just make sure you weed it out, but just stay on top of it, because I want all of us to be healthy and thriving as best we can at whatever age we are. With the protein, definitely I gathered that not only do we want to eat protein, but better quality protein. We want most of the majority of our diet to consist of less processed, complete protein sources. We want to eat more of that. We can eat some of the processed proteins that still retain valuable macronutrients, and try to eat less of the highly processed, high in trans fat and sodium protein sources. And it gives examples of what those are with the pictures. Also, something else that I like to munch on when we're talking about raising iron and protein is dried raisins for iron, and mostly for the protein, trail mix. They got raisins, peanuts, and all that in there. So, yeah, that's a good snack too. So yeah, try to get your protein intake in some kind of way, even if it's through little snacks. But I also wanted to just make sure that, it's crucial when you're working out to have protein in your diet because it's going to help with your muscle repair and growth and sustain your energy, help improve your recovery time, increase your strength and endurance, body composition, your appetite control, and just optimal performance. So, you can screenshot all of that. But yeah, they don't have those protein shakes for no reason. So that just lets you know that if you're working out, the protein is definitely going to go hand in hand with sustaining or building your muscle mass. Also, I thought this would be interesting just to check out the myths about women in protein. So if you're concerned about any of those, then, look at that. Also, ways that you can tell if you're missing the mark on your protein intake while you're working out. And so I thought that was interesting, as well as the sweat smelling like ammonia. Ooh, yeah, stuff like that. So just, yeah. Yeah, we got to stay hydrated. Water is definitely important, and especially how my hands and stuff be crimping up sometimes. So definitely that we keep that around here. Just try to stay about 1 or 2 cases up of the Pure Life water and the Gatorade. My favorite is this Glacier Cherry, and then the kids like this Glacier Freeze too. And this just shows, the difference in when you should drink something like Gatorade for the electrolytes and water, which you should prioritize drinking water mainly. But yeah, this is about how much water we should drink every day, depending on how much you weigh. You just got to start being more in tune with your body, which if you're a person that has battled with stuff like depression and things, or you're a person that's a very mental person and you just in your head more and almost can disconnect from your body, that is some things that you got to start taking care of and looking into and paying attention with yourself, because your body will speak to you, if you pay attention. And you definitely don't want it to result in something bigger later on down the line. And speaking of which, I have this link in the description box of a great video that I saw a couple years ago about 23 signs that your body shows you that you need more nutrients. And so since I mentioned that, I'm making reference to this video, and in the comment section, they just kind of paraphrased everything that he said in the video. So make sure you click to look at that. But also you can screenshot this list, and I highlighted which vitamin deficiency or nutrient deficiency that those symptoms reveal. So like I say, listen to your body, because it definitely will let you know what's going on, and you want to catch it before, it turns into something bigger, like I said. So I would just say, if nothing else, multivitamins. If you're not just having all kinds of vitamins, now of course you can have your specifics or consult your doctor or something like that, but a multivitamin, vitamin D with the K in there, iron if you're a person that tends to run low on iron. But I am trying to incorporate more eating healthier, which I am trying to bring to the channel as well, because everybody ain't in the best of health, and everybody is at different stages of things. So definitely want to incorporate that more into the channel. Some healthier meals sometimes, a variety, and just talking about, self-care, not just looking cute on the outside, but internal as well. So definitely, make sure you up on your vitamins. Try to exercise, even if it's just a little bit. So the tuna cakes that we are going to do today is high in iron and protein. It's lightweight, it's not too heavy. So if you are a person that's trying to manage your weight, hope y'all enjoy this. Let me show y'all the ingredients. So if you've already seen the lemon tuna cake video and came over here to this video for a more in-depth health talk discussion, then thank you for watching, and I really hope that it was helpful. If you haven't seen the lemon tuna cake video and you want something that's a lightweight lunch or something that's going to be rich in iron and protein, since we just discussed all of that, then feel free to click and watch it if you want to. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Bye.